Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a concept that could completely shift the way we portray mythic gods on screen. If you've ever watched a modern epic and felt kind of let down by the way mythology is handled, you are definitely not alone. So let's explore how we can move away from those tired Hollywood tropes and tap into the strange, very real power of what we call divine attractors. Right now, modern cinema basically gives us two super limited options. First up, the superhuman person. This is where Zeus is just a corporate CEO sitting in the clouds, and Poseidon is some guy with a trident and enough CGI water to drown a continent. They're essentially superheroes, distinguished only by their visual effects budget. But then, on the flip side, we have the psychological metaphor. This is where the gods are just entirely explained away as internal complexes. So a journey to the underworld, well, that becomes nothing more than a trauma-induced hallucination. The myth is just reduced to an attractive shell for modern psychology. And honestly, this binary creates a massive cinematic trap. It's summed up perfectly by this idea. The first approach trivializes the gods, the second abolishes them. It totally strips mythology of its ancient, profound power. But what if we didn't have to choose between a giant CGI man and a psychological complex? There is a brilliant, mind-bending third possibility we can explore today.
Part 1. The Divine Attractor, a New Regime of Reality.
So, what if we completely stopped thinking of gods as these giant people in the sky and instead borrowed a concept from dynamical systems, the attractor? Think of it kind of like a giant whirlpool in a river. It doesn't move every single drop of water by hand, right? But its mere presence shapes the trajectory of everything around it. It's a stable pattern within a cultural and psychological field. Different movements, starting at totally different points, all gradually fall into this exact same form. Let's look at how this practically plays out in human lives through a cycle of belief. Picture a sailor out on the water who genuinely fears Poseidon is angry with him. First, he expects divine action. Because of this intense fear, he reads the sea differently, interpreting totally normal accidents as warnings. Second, he acts on that expectation. His fear actually alters his judgment and the actions of his crew. Third, those frantic, fear-driven actions produce a catastrophe, a shipwreck, which eerily resembles the expected divine action. And fourth, the catastrophe absolutely confirms Poseidon's anger. Belief has practically, tangibly entered causality. What happens here is the creation of an alternative regime of reality, growing right inside our shared world. Now, taking this approach absolutely doesn't disprove atmospheric physics. Modern thought loves to assume that if a storm can be explained by pressure systems, well, the god is dismissed. But an attractor doesn't compete with meteorology. The waves remain waves, the wood breaks simply because it can't withstand the physical force. Rather, the god acts through the convergence of those physical events, human decisions, and inherited stories. They all exist simultaneously. Section 2. The Signatures of the Gods, Recognizing the Divine. If we were actually filming this, showing a giant CGI Poseidon rising out of the water might literally ruin the whole effect. Instead, imagine his terrifying presence accumulating through this gravitational field of hostile events. A horse shying violently, ground tremors right when Odysseus speaks in pride, dreams of black water, oars splitting without cause, storms that are individually plausible, sure, but collectively intolerable. No single event proves anything on its own, but together, the sequence begins to possess a signature. And that signature is the god. Poseidon becomes the literal form taken by the resistance of the world to Odysseus's return. Now let's contrast this with Athena, the attractor of intelligibility. Where Poseidon gathers events into pure hostility, Athena gathers them into sudden strategy and lucid intervention. The modern psychological interpretation loves to say, well, Athena is really only part of Odysseus's internal brain. But the attractor model completely flips out on its head. Odysseus may sometimes become part of Athena. She isn't just his own intelligence. She is a massive field of strategic possibility that he actively steps into. Here is something absolutely crucial to take away. An attractor can be real without being good. We definitely have this modern temptation to turn ancient gods into moral educators. But these forces? They're closer to weather, appetites, and raw power than to any system of justice. Think about the structures that still exist in our world today. A nation, a massive financial market, an algorithm driving social media engagement. These are powers that far exceed individuals. They recruit new carriers, and they punish those who try to leave. We might just prefer to call these ancient gods by modern administrative vocabulary today. Because let's face it, humans routinely create powers that become far greater than their creators. Section 3. Odysseus, the human attractor. Now let's turn the lens onto the man at the center of it all.
Odysseus is a guy caught in a massive metaphysical crossfire. His journey isn't just about moving across a map. It's a huge struggle against multiple realities constantly seeking to claim him. Poseidon pulls him toward endless displacement, Calypso toward timeless suspension, the sirens offer fatal knowledge, and Ithaca pulls him back toward identity and his remembered self. He only survives because he can enter these realities without completely surrendering to any of them.
So the really crucial point is this. What makes him Odysseus is not an unchanging outward form, but the direction to which he eventually returns. He lies, he changes his name, and he bends almost without limit, but he doesn't break. This means that instead of being reduced to a conventionally broken modern veteran, Odysseus acts as his own attractor. The gods might alter his path, sure, but they do not finally possess his destination. Literally no hostile reality can permanently rewrite his direction.
Section 4. The reality of belief, embracing the unexplained. To actually portray this epic correctly on screen, we'd have to radically shift our cinematic language. We have to fully embrace ambiguity and really resist the urge to provide a neat scientific explanation at the end. A serious myth shouldn't just solve the puzzle for you. The audience should be repeatedly forced to face 3 contradictory interpretations simultaneously. Did the god cause the storm? Did human belief cause the mistakes? Or has the distinction between those two entirely ceased to make sense? This ambiguity isn't a trick, it is the very ontology of the story. The supernatural and the natural are just completely woven together. And this leads us to a seriously fascinating possibility. A god might simply be what happens when a possibility becomes powerful enough to literally organize the world around itself. By the end of the story, viewers might completely deny that Poseidon exists as a literal discrete being holding a trident. But they can no longer deny that Odysseus has traveled through a distinctly Poseidonian reality. The pattern is just undeniable. As we close out this explainer, we're left with this haunting, totally unanswered question. We know belief feeds these attractors, selects for them, and opens paths for them to act. But did human beings create the attractor through centuries of storytelling? Or did an older, non-human pattern in the world draw those stories toward itself? Who imagined who? It remains way beyond the horizon, because out there, the sea is still moving, and someone has offended it.